Just a heads up, this video contains plenty of bright flashing visuals. If you're sensitive to that kind of thing, either click off the video or just listen to it in the background. Thank you. Hello and welcome to another game review. Today we're looking at Beat Souls, a newly released indie action rhythm game developed and self-published by Zoo Corporation, who were kind enough to provide me with a free review copy. So to be clear, I was not paid for this review and every opinion and statement is entirely my own, but I did not have to buy the game for myself. We'll be looking at what the game does right, what it does wrong, and answering the quintessential question, is it worth your money? Now, if at any point you think I'm doing a good job, please consider leaving a like and subscribe for more content. It really does help me out. Also, check out my Twitter and Discord linked below, or Patreon if you want early access to future videos. Alright, enough of that, let's get into it. So as far as this review goes, I think it's going to be relatively short and sweet compared to my normal meticulous style for two main reasons. Firstly, the game is simple at its core, which is not a bad thing, but it does limit the amount of things I can really pick apart. Secondly, I think that this is one of those games where you'll probably know pretty early on if it's something you're interested no matter what I end up saying about it. But of course, I'll still tell you all about it. First up, the technical bits. The system requirements are on screen now, and yeah, this game will run on a potato. I had absolutely zero frame rate dips or technical issues in my playtime. I have absolutely nothing to say about the game on a technical level because I straight up didn't have any problems whatsoever. Good shit. On to story. There really isn't one. Okay, I'll give a little bit more detail than that. The premise is that you play as Mikoto, a priestess who must use music to soothe the restless spirits of the yokai, Japanese demons. Each of the characters has a bit of lore, but overall, that's the entire story. It's more or less just a basic premise. Not really much for me to critique here, so I'll just move on. On to visuals. Beat Souls is self-described as a cyberpunk game, being a bright, exciting anime style that's not quite chibi, but definitely leads in that direction. It also features a distinctly neon color palette, though lacking in the darker overtones that you'd see in a more traditional cyberpunk setting. It gives the game this very arcadey kind of look, and the fact that basically everything is animated and syncs to the beat of the music really does add to the whole bouncy anime aesthetic. That being said, there are a lot of bright lights going off all over the fucking screen, and it can be a bit much at times. One of my play sessions was after a long day at work and I had been feeling a bit under the weather. This game actually made my mild headache get substantially worse due to all the bright flashing lights, which is something that is actually incredibly rare for me. To be clear, when I played it while at 100%, no issue. But Beat Souls is visually a lot harsher than most games. I'd say if you have a medical condition like epilepsy and really want to play this game, talk to your doctor beforehand. Seriously. But overall, on a visual level, I liked it. It has its charm, and even though I personally would have toned down the harshness a bit, I think the game looks pretty damn good. Music and sound. Now unfortunately I wasn't able to get my hands on the soundtrack for this game, which I know kinda sucks since I'm reviewing a music-based game, but even looking up the song titles and artist name came back with nothing. So you're mostly gonna have to take my word for it for the time being, though I will show you some of my gameplay with sound later on in the video. And there are other gameplay videos out there for you to check out. Though pro tip, make sure to include the word rhythm in your search or the results will only show things like Dark Souls and Bloodborne. As far as the music itself goes, it's all good, solid rhythm game stuff. A little softer than I've come to expect from rhythm games, but that's not a bad thing. A lot of rhythm games like to hit you with these pounding, aggressive techno tracks, but Beat Souls pulls back on that end a bit. Different tracks have different stylistic influences, and that's something I like a lot. There are tracks that take on a more traditional electronic rhythm sound. There are ones that lean more into rock with guitar solos and fast chords, and there are jazzy, swing-type songs as well. It's all pretty good stuff, though I'd say that while the music certainly sounds fine and I don't have any serious complaints, it's ultimately pretty forgettable. Nothing about the soundtrack really stands out to me, and it's not the kind of thing that sticks in your head. Now that's not something I'd be too harsh on in most games, but this is a rhythm game. Music is central to the experience. If the songs aren't catchy and don't have staying power, it's going to hurt the core appeal of the game. It's not enough to make a good game bad, and a good soundtrack is not enough to make a bad game good, but it's definitely something to be aware of. So overall, the music of Beat Souls is good, but nothing spectacular. Now finally, on to gameplay. As I already mentioned, Beat Souls is a rhythm game. Now, rhythm games live or die by their main point or gimmick. Beat Souls has a simple but very unique system. So there are 5 tracks and you can move freely between them. The main things to consider are the obstacles, which you obviously need to avoid, and the collectibles, which are how you score points. However, instead of moving your character into these collectibles, you must instead maneuver so your little collector things hit the souls instead. By default, they are 1 track to the left and 1 track to the right. However, you can make it so they instead extend 2 tracks in a single direction. You must also at times shift between yellow and blue collectors to collect yellow and blue souls respectively. Again, simple premise, but one I haven't personally seen before. This alone is something that makes Beat Souls exciting to play compared to other rhythm games, and for the most part, it works pretty well. The controls are mostly pretty responsive, the obstacles are all synced to the beat as are the majority of motions you'll end up making. The souls, interestingly enough, are usually found in the offbeats, which is pretty unusual since most rhythm games have a heavier focus on the downbeat. I dig it though. The scoring system is based almost entirely on soul collection. You'll get points with each soul collected and a bonus based on your combo, maxing out at a combo of 50. Get hit or miss a soul and your combo resets to 0. Also, as you collect souls, your fever gauge at the bottom will rise. Get it past the fever chance icon and you'll spawn a fever zone where everything is worth more points than usual. You'll also get a nice little icon for beating a level with no damage and one for getting a full combo. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a short clip of my gameplay with the sound and without my commentary, just so you can see how the game works alongside its sound design. I mean, it's one thing for me to explain it to you, but it's another to actually see how it all comes together. Each map has a normal and hard mode, and the maps are split up into 3 groups based on the 3 yokai you're supposed to pacify. It's almost like 3 separate campaigns, with the first song from each yokai being dead easy and the last being pretty challenging. The songs are all graded on difficulty via a number scale from 1 to 10, with the hard mode usually landing 2 or 3 levels above normal mode. So hard mode on the first song is still going to be significantly easier than easy mode on the 10th song. I've got no issues here and I think it's an effective system. Whenever you hit an obstacle or if the character itself hits a soul, you'll lose a bit of life, with different levels giving you different starting life. If you reach 0, you lose and have to start over. You can pick up health throughout the stage, so you've almost always got a chance to recover from your mistakes. Overall, I found it very hard to actually fail most stages, even the hard ones. Ultimately, I think that's fine, as I feel Beat Souls encourages more of a try to full combo everything mentality as opposed to one and done. The one thing I wasn't a huge fan of is jumping. Some obstacles require you to jump over them, but it just doesn't feel as responsive as literally everything else, and when you have to do multiple jumps in quick succession, it feels like there's actually a buffer if you press the jump button before you've landed. This makes it feel clunky, and also makes it so if you're slightly off rhythm when starting a series of jumps, you really have no way to reorient yourself since the buffer will lock you in place and there's no way to cancel a jump. It's a stark contrast to the snappy feel of the rest of the game, and it made me strongly dislike maps where lots of jumping was a requirement. The mapping itself was pretty hit or miss, though it hit far more often than it missed. One thing I liked was that each map tended to have its own theme with how it wanted you to play. Some maps would focus more on weaving in and out of obstacles, some would be about rhythmically changing the colors of the souls, some would have you do a lot of manipulating the collectors, and some would be a bit of a mixed bag. I do like this because it gives things a bit of variety. If you have a rhythm game and every map feels the same, that's a great way to bore your players. But I think Beat Souls ultimately falters in that not every idea is particularly well executed. Every so often there'd be a set of obstacles that makes you move in a weird way, or the souls would be structured in a way where the intended movement path is not clear. Or sometimes jumping obstacles will be obscured by larger obstacles so you have significantly less time to react. And of course, maps that rely on strings of jumps are annoying due to the aforementioned issues I have with jumping in general. Of course, you could just avoid the maps you don't like in the long term, but it's still a problem when a notable minority of the content in a game has significant issues. There's also what the game calls Infinite Hell Mode, which is basically just a case of you pick one of the 3 main groups of songs and just keep going until you fail as it gets progressively harder. I'm cool with it. It gives you an avenue to test your skills in an endurance setting, and you can also compete in online high scores, which I think is almost never a bad thing. It gives games that bit of extra sticking power. One thing that absolutely has to be mentioned is mostly an issue for the seasoned rhythm gamers, which to be clear, I'm not. I play Beat Saber at a moderately high level, but that's about it. But if you're the kind of person who plays a lot of rhythm games and gets really good at them, you may come away a little disappointed from Beat Souls. Even at its hardest stages, it really never gets harder than pretty challenging, and I'd imagine that people who are experts at things like Step Mania, DDR, Clone Hero, and play those at a high level will find themselves getting full combos first try on just about every stage. Now for me, I'm not particularly good at rhythm games unless I dump a bunch of time into them, so I've got room to grow. But if I was, I don't think the game would have really provided a satisfying challenge to me. So overall, on a gameplay level, it was pretty good. For the most part, it did its job as a rhythm game with an interesting core gimmick. It played well and I had fun with it. Of course, it's not perfect, but the issues I had were a minority. Overall, a good time. So what do I think of Beat Souls? Well, if you've watched any of my previous reviews, you know that I hate review scores. I don't think they do a damn bit of good, so I'm going to answer the question that's really on your minds. Is Beat Souls worth your money? Beat Souls is available on PC for $11.99 or your regional equivalent. And honestly, I'd say wait for a sale. The game is good, but not great. Ultimately, I feel like it's worth dropping a few bucks on, but not something I'm going to stick with long term. And if you're a rhythm game expert, you may want to pass. That being said, the game does have a free demo on Steam, so if you're unsure, I'd highly recommend checking that out if you have literally any interest in purchasing it. After all, no matter what in the fuck I have to say, you ultimately know what you enjoy more than I do. So yeah, I personally recommend waiting for a sale, but by all means try it out for yourself and make your own decisions. Thanks for watching. Big thank you to my patrons, especially my $10 patrons Spawn and Bulk Squat Thrust. Follow me on Twitter at AdsTweets and join my Discord server for some good times. Also, consider checking out my Patreon page for early access to future videos, and I also stream right here on YouTube every Tuesday and Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Play the electro swing.
Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back